Hey, Jim, I see that you're drinking some tea there.
I am drinking this tea here.
Have you ever thought about how plants also kind of drink water?
I guess I knew they did. I knew they did that, but I haven't thought a lot about it.
Well, today we're going to talk about how plants basically, if you think about it, defy gravity by pulling water up out of the ground to the tippy tops of their leaves and keeping them alive.
Yeah. I feel like I have a phrase in my mind that might be the one you've used in the past to describe that kind of action, but maybe it's different with plants. I don't know.
I think you have a phrase in your mind, and I think we're going to learn that there's way more going on than just that.
Okay.
Are you ready to dive in?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Hey, I'm Melissa.
I'm Jam.
And I'm a chemist.
And I'm not.
And welcome to Chemistry for Your Life.
The podcast helps you understand the chemistry of your everyday life.
Okay, so I got to today's episode topic in a little bit of a roundabout way. So,
okay.
A listener and member of the community, Letila, asked about the chemistry of pregnancy tests, which I was like, that is such a good question. And so we are going to do an episode about a pregnancy test, but we're not going to do an episode about pregnancy tests until next week because there's a lot of chemistry or 2 weeks, the next episode.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of chemistry in pregnancy test, but I wanted to first talk about the way that the urine moves across the stick.
Right.
Because there's a lot of other chemistry, and that one's kind of separate from the other stuff we'll be talking about.
Okay.
And so I thought it'd be a fun episode to look at that only. And so I was looking for examples of that. And that is the word that I think you're thinking of, which is
capillary action.
Yep, that's exactly
nice.
Right. So I was like, oh, we could do an episode on capillary action. It's actually like around in a lot of things. That would be so cool. And so I was looking for everyday life applications. And then I stumbled upon this plant paper and I realized that just saying capillary action is kind of really taking away a lot of the very cool chemistry that's actually going on in plants.
Okay, interesting.
And so there's like way more to the story than just capillary action.
Nice. Okay.
And, go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't remember that we actually used this word, but I remember the first time that as a kid, this was demonstrated to me in a cool class activity. Like maybe they used the phrase or not, but I think I was pretty young, so I could see them talking about how plants drink water and blah, 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 but not saying the phrase capillary action.
Yeah.
Was we put some food coloring into some water and put celery in it and watched after a little while, I can't remember how long, that you could see the color of that water in the celery and how it was coming up from the bottom. And it's just so fascinating. And that like picture very much stuck in my mind from way long ago. For some reason, I think it was even like first grade, that long ago. So
that is awesome. I love that. I did look at a lot of things about that.
Yeah.
And so I will say capillary action is very much a part of situations like that. Capillary action we'll talk more about towards the end, but there's more.
Yeah.
In living plants especially, and it's really interesting.
Nice.
Okay.
Well, go plants.
Go. I love plants. I have a garden where I grow my own vegetables, and I'm currently renting, and I'm trying to leave the home that I rent a little bit nicer than when I found it. And there wasn't garden beds or anything, and we've put in garden beds, and we put in a bunch of native Texas plants.
Nice.
Which is nice to the environment, nice to the pollinators, nice to look at, and nice to maintain because they're native, so they kind of just thrive on their own.
Yeah.
So that's fun.
Awesome.
So I know I always say this, but I'm really excited about this episode. Okay. And before we get into the details of what's really going on when plants take up water, I want to cite this paper, and I don't usually do this, but my research came so heavily from one article. It's from Nature, which is a peer-reviewed journal that has an article called water uptake and transport in vascular plants.
Okay.
And so we always cite our sources, but this one was so key and was kind of a primary source that I wanted to just cite it up front.
Nice.
Okay. And also before we talk about plants, I think we need to remember some chemistry lessons about water.
Okay.
Okay. So water is polar. And do you want to take a stab at saying what that means?
Yes, it has like an unequal distribution of electrons in a given molecule of water.
Right.
And so it ends up meaning it's more negative on one side and more positive on another, which has a huge effect on its intermolecular forces with, other things, including itself, including other water molecules and stuff, but also how it interacts with things that are either also polar or non-polar.
Right.
Or whatever. What else on that?
No, that was great. That was perfect. Yeah. So water is polar. So water is made up of of oxygen with 2 hydrogens around it. And bonds are typically made up of 2 atoms sort of sharing electrons. So this oxygen is sharing its electrons with these 2 hydrogens, but oxygen is a little bit selfish. It wants those electrons bad. And so it's pulling electrons towards itself, and it's saying like, I'm going to get these electrons. So that means it gets more of them. And that's what causes the uneven distribution. And that does really impact how it interacts with other things around it. And I don't know for sure if you said this word, but we've talked about hydrogen bonds.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I just read a message that I love from one of our community members, Dorien. And I guess they are was it Dutch that they shared this language? I just read it.
Yes.
In Dutch. Yes. Okay. So Dorien has heard me complain about the term hydrogen bonding because hydrogen bonding is a way that 2 molecules that have that really unequal distribution of oxygen and hydrogen, where it's like really negative on one side and really positive on the other because the electrons aren't equally shared. The way those 2 molecules interact with each other is a very strong interaction. So it's sometimes called a hydrogen bond, even though it's not really a bond, but it is very strong for an attraction between 2 non-bonded atoms. And so it's kind of this weird gray area, but the bond name confuses students a lot. And so I don't love it.
Yeah.
But Dorien said that the Dutch way of saying that is more like hydrogen bridge.
Oh, yes.
Which I really like because like the hydrogen is sort of bridging these 2 different molecules.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is that seems very within reach. Like if someone had just been able to coin that loudly enough, early enough on, that seems like it would have stuck way better and been, of course, less confusing.
Yes.
So I totally agree with all of your students who are confused by that because it is hard for me to wrap my head around too, and to remember that even as I say this is not really a bond.
Yeah.
When we're talking about intermolecular forces and hydrogen bonding, but hydrogen bridge.
Yeah.
That sounds,
Yeah, it's like this hydrogen makes a bridge between these 2 molecules. And so they're kind of connected even though they're separate entities. I love it. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for sharing that, Dorien. I haven't had a chance to reply back to that message yet, but I'm very excited about it. So you're getting my like real life literally like 5 minutes ago. Okay, so hydrogen bonding means that 2 water molecules or this hydrogen bridge, these water molecules are very connected to one another. So they're not really bonded, but they do form a network that's stronger than a lot of other 2 molecules interacting. And that particular thing about water being able to bond 2 molecules, or not bond, but attract 2 molecules, forming this network really closely together, makes something called cohesion, which is like, okay, these hydrogen bonds, they're really closely together. And we talked a lot about it in our episode, Why Does Water Form Droplets, of how these water molecules are really attracted to each other. But then they can have attractive forces to some other things, and that's called adhesion. So cohesion is when it's attracted to itself. Adhesion is, I think of it like it being attracted to some of the polar groups in the glass. So like glass is usually silicon dioxide. So like there's some polarity there, being attracted to that. So cohesion, it's attracted to itself. Adhesion, it's attracted to other things. And also because of cohesion, we get strong surface tension. So those bonds basically make it so that those intermolecular forces with that strong dipole make it so that when you have water, it's like very closely connected to one another. I imagine it like each molecule is an individual person, but they're all holding hands. They're like making a network. So those are key chemistry lessons to get into what I'm about to talk about. Okay. So water is transported in plants through very small tubes called xylem. Xylem are made up of initially they're individual cells that are sort of stacked end to end, and their diameter is the length of a human hair.
Wow. The diameter?
The width.
Width, okay.
I think of a human hair.
Yeah.
So they're stacked end to end and make these continuous open tubes. And initially they're living, but they actually undergo this programmed cell death. So it's like the plant says like, okay, you're going to live for this long and then you're going to die. And then they basically, the cells create these just hollow tubes. So they make their own pipe system.
Wow.
Which is amazing.
That's cool.
So cool. And so those are very narrow, and sometimes with very narrow tubes, we see what you described earlier as capillary action. And capillary action is where water, because of how basically sticky it is through these intermolecular forces to itself and other things, can essentially defy the force of gravity and travel up in usually a very narrow space because of the way the water is attracted to the sides of the glass and each other. As it climbs up, it's attracted to this glass. It's pulling things along with it. And so that sort of action just keeps happening until it has gone up this tiny tube. And you see this often with, we have capillary tubes in the medical field where they use them to take a little sample of blood. And we also use those a lot of times in chemistry labs.
Interesting.
And we've seen it also in paper towels.
Right.
That same idea, if you dip the bottom of a paper towel into water, it's going to absorb. This. It's really what's happening anytime you dry any liquid up with a towel or a paper towel, coffee filters, what you saw in the celery. All of that is driven by capillary action, which is this idea that water is sort of able to pull itself along because of the way that it's interacting with the things around it.
Yeah.
And it's often from these really narrow tubes called capillary tubes. But that is also what's responsible for we call it sideways laminar flow, for the flow across, like in a pregnancy test, where the urine is just in one area, but it travels across in this one direction, is because of the attractive forces that are sort of pulling it along.
Or like a lot of COVID tests like that too, where you can literally see that solution going across and it hits that control line and goes, and you're just kind of watching it go along.
Yeah. I am going to do the next week's episode, or the next new episode is going to be on pregnancy tests, but COVID tests do work very, very similar. Same technology, just slightly tweaks in what it's looking for.
I have more personal experience myself with taking a COVID test than I do with taking pregnancy tests.
Yeah.
Just my own experience, just kind of how I think about just how things have shaked out for me.
You haven't had a lot of occasion to take a pregnancy test?
Not as much as I expected, when I was younger.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's these nice hollow tubes, and you might think that the water travels up through these very hollow tubes through capillary action.
Right.
But there's actually a mathematical formula that can calculate how tall capillary action can go.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I see. I was kind of wondering that when you said it's going to be more complicated, because I was thinking about how for like pumps of water and stuff like that, like there's limits there too for like if you're trying to pump some water up from like the bottom of our pool, for instance, whenever we've had to empty it for maintenance and stuff like that, it's like there's a certain amount of suction required and power to do that. And I actually initially thought maybe I could siphon some water out of the bottom of our pool down into the creek below, which is lower.
Yeah.
But the amount of suction force I would need to generate just myself to siphon it with my human abilities was I could not get it high enough to overcome the whatever.
Yeah.
And so as soon as you said it's more complicated, I was like, that question mark started to appear where I was like, oh, there's got to be a limit.
Yeah.
Where even our machines and stuff have those limits.
Right.
Like, what the heck? So they have some sort of secret.
They have a secret.
Okay.
Yeah, capillary action could explain like short plants, but it can only go up like, I think depending on the diameter of the tube, it's like, I think a meter or I don't remember what, but essentially it can't go as tall as trees go.
Right.
So there's got to be something else going on. And that's where this paper came into play, this water uptake and transport in vascular plants. So plants also are constantly losing water. So much like how we lose water when we sweat, you know, plants lose water through their leaves. They open up little holes in their leaves to get CO2.
Oh, yes.
Which they need for photosynthesis. Which photosynthesis is a whole episode on its own. That would be a fun one. I just realized we haven't done that yet.
We haven't really, but we talked a bit about that when we went into some of your research about solar cells.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, that's right. We really didn't talk. We talked a little bit about this with leaves changing color because them losing moisture is good when they need to, but when there's less sunlight and it's not as viable for them, it's like, we got to stop this. Yeah. You know?
Exactly.
So that's crazy. That does tie into that stuff. We've talked about these things a little enough to tie in. That's cool.
I had forgotten that we talked about that. I'm glad you remembered that. Good job.
That was one of those that, like, there's many that we've done that I would not want to be tested on.
Yeah.
I'm like, these are ones that I can remember well enough, I guess.
Yeah.
But,
I think about that one a lot. It's like, oh, those red and orange things those pigments were always in there. We just couldn't see them. Yeah. And that's the part I think about from that episode.
It's weird how many things trees are hiding, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, it really is a tree-spiracy.
Yeah, I know we've talked about this before, but there is a very cool Radio Lab episode called From Tree to Shining Tree.
Oh, yes.
About the fungi network and how trees can kind of like, when they know they're going to die, dump their nutrients to help the other trees through this network. It is wild.
Yeah, so weird.
Ooh, that is a very good episode. If, finish this episode, but put that one on your queue. Yeah. Because it's very good.
Definitely.
Radiolab was the first podcast I ever listened to.
I think it I don't think it was actually the first, but I think it was the first one I got into. Yeah. Like, I remember venturing into some podcasts and be like, what is this section of, I put my iPod in to sync it with my computer. What is this section over here of podcasts? And I remember like, you know what Homestar Runner is? Strong Bad.
I knew what it was in junior high. I knew the guy behind me talked about it a lot.
They put some of their stuff out as podcasts, but it was like their stuff that already exists as video podcasts. That was a thing that didn't last very long. It's kind of around, I guess, now, but those were technically the first ones I ever tried, and then got into was Radiolab. Nice. For sure. So,
it was a gateway for a lot of us. Right before we started this podcast, I met Jad Bumrad.
That's right. We went to that seminar.
And I accidentally snuck into a thing beforehand that was supposed to be for journalism students. Nice. I asked if I was allowed, and they're like, yeah, it's for students. But it was like, for journalism
nice.
students.
It does seem like, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Like, I can see why they might want to have something special, but it seems like you should have been allowed.
That's probably fine. Yeah. But it was assigned in a class, and I was like, man, that class changed my life. You know, I think about that a lot. Okay,
that's cool.
Back to plants.
It's cool that we both, like, I didn't get to meet him, but we both were at that same seminar he did. Yeah, and he had not yet left Radiolab back then. So then, cool, very cool dude. Him and Robert, the classic duo.
I know. Yeah, that's what people are going to be saying about us.
Yeah, totally. I haven't listened to their stuff more recent, so I'm sure, I'm sure the people who are in that and have taken the helm, so to speak, are doing a great job. But our like nostalgia of those early Radiolab days is hard to beat. You know, when you're like that in love with it, and it's that special from that time period. But so go check it out. Old stuff, but very good stuff. I'm sure that
very good.
I'm sure that the quality of it has not degraded over time.
We haven't seen each other in a while, so we're kind of just in a chatty mood.
Yeah.
So this is probably going to be a long episode. Sorry in advance. Okay, so back to plants. So the process of the water molecule in the plant. Wait, hang on. Let's see. Let me get back where it was. Okay, so, yes, they open the stomata for photosynthesis. And in the process, the water molecules in the plant then start to come into contact with the air.
Right.
And when water and air are in contact, evaporation starts to happen because the air does not have very many water molecules in it, oftentimes relative to the concentration that's, right there in the plant. And so those molecules on the surface will start to get enough energy to sort of break free and become gas. So what basically happens is when you have liquid water and you put energy in it in the form of heat and light, which both of those things are often happening outside during the day where plants are, they open their stomata and the water on the, basically that's like in their cells is going to start to be available or like exposed to heat and light. And so then that's energy basically. And as the energy is being put into them, they're going to gain more and more energy. And those water molecules right there at the interface of the leaf and the air will be able to break free of the surface. But because there's that surface tension, there's a gap whenever you could think one molecule of water leaves and it sort of leaves a hole behind. And so the water molecule that's below it would be sort of sucked up to the top.
Yes.
And then the one that was below that gets sucked up, and then below that and below that and below that. And so it essentially creates this long chain effect where water molecules are being tugged into place towards the surface where water evaporated from. Okay. And that happens in crazy high rates. So many water molecules get lost to transpiration. The amount of water lost via transpiration, this is a direct quote from that paper. The amount of water lost to transpiration can be incredibly high. A single irrigated corn plant growing in Kansas can use 200 liters of water during a typical summer, while some large rainforest trees can use nearly 12,000 liters of water. 1,200. So 1,200 liters of water in a single day.
That is insane. So
I know.
Is part of that crazy calculation that seems like too much to us the fact that there's so much water in the ground that we don't see it in liter form, right? It's like dispersed throughout the soil.
Yes.
And it's being pulled in these, and it's gradual, right? It's like a sipping, very, very slow sipping, but by the end of the day has been 1,200 liters.
Lots and lots.
That's crazy. I wonder how much, like in a given, I don't know, like cubic yard of soil or something, how much water there is.
Yeah, that's a good question.
One of those things where it'd be like, it'd still be super impressive that trees are doing that. But even that figure of like, here's how much water is in this soil might be also crazy.
Yeah.
Like very surprising to us. But
yeah. And how does soil stay damp when plants are taking this much water,
For real.
But I guess they sort of adapt to the soil that they're in also,
And we are used to in Texas seeing those like cracks in the ground.
Yeah.
Like in like July and August where it's just like, oh, the soil.
There's none.
Yeah. It's all gone.
That is an irrigated corn plant and in the rainforest. It's like the opposite to that would be how much can a plant go without? How much can a desert cactus go without? How many days?
Yeah.
So, okay, back to then now how this is happening at a super high rate. And so that force of the water evaporating and sort of tugging the next molecules into place is literally the primary force of water moving through the whole tree.
Wow.
Is one goes away, that leaves an absence, it pulls more up. And so this tension is basically pulling water all the way from the roots. It like makes this chain reaction that goes all the way down. And it actually is kind of similar to us if we're like drinking from a straw, but instead of humans like sucking up water through a straw, it's like evaporation sucking out water molecules, and the tree is the straw, kind of.
That's crazy.
And so it's this idea of the surface tension of the water plus the cohesive force of water forms this network all the way through the tree. And that is called the cohesion tension mechanism.
Dang.
And they call this the soil plant atmosphere continuum. So there's literally a chain of water that goes from the soil to the plant, up the plant to the atmosphere. It's a continuum of water that's being basically tugged out by the evaporation.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That's insane.
And they've recreated this in lab. There's an evaporative flow system in a synthetic tree where they were able to recreate the cohesion tension system.
Dang.
Being the thing that's
cool.
Pulling the water.
That's cool.
Isn't that insane?
Yeah, very insane.
Aren't plants so cool?
Yeah.
And chemistry so cool?
Yes.
They're using chemistry to get what they want.
It's crazy because it just doesn't seem like it'd be enough, but then it is. It's like they've got so many water molecules that are leaving at such a high rate. So many leaves, so many. What's the individual straw called? Xylem. Just so much of all of it that like it's just crazy that you take a very tiny molecular thing and then like make it be happening tons of times all over a plant, and it's like a lot of water's moving.
Yeah.
One molecule at a time.
Yeah.
What the heck?
Isn't that amazing?
That's crazy.
I love science. Okay, so if there's no evaporation, so like I think do stomata close at night? I have that written down, but then I was like, is that true or is that something I made up? But if there's not light or sun, then there's definitely not enough heat or energy to evaporate that water.
Right.
So when that's not happening and we don't have that long continuum, there is also osmosis at play. And osmosis I wanted to talk about because I got that reverse osmosis filter.
Oh, yes.
And I was like, have we talked about osmosis before? So osmosis is essentially the process by which water is going to sort of even out concentration across a membrane. So this is hard to describe, but I want you to imagine a wall with water on both sides of it.
Okay.
And one side is really salty water.
Okay.
And the other side is like half as salty water.
Okay.
So if you have a wall between that doesn't let anything through, those two are going to stay completely separate.
Right.
But if you make that wall have water-sized holes only, so it can only let water through and nothing else, the water will naturally move towards the more concentrated side so that both of them have an even amount of concentration.
Right.
So if you have like 2x salty versus 1x salty, the water will move itself over so that both are 1.5 times salty.
Yeah. Wow.
That's called osmosis.
Interesting.
So water naturally is going to flow, and that has lots of cool applications too. That's why salting is a good method of preserving meat. Is because literally the water is going to leave the meat to try to go be and even out the concentration of salt, because you put salt at such a high concentration on the outside. That water will just leave. And then without water, that causes things to die. So bacteria can't live there.
And so I, like the method I have used to prepare a steak is like doing a salt rub on the outside and leaving it for like 24 to 48 hours in the fridge on a dry rack. And then the outside getting very dry is really good for getting a good crust. And obviously it pulls some moisture from the further in the inside too, but it doesn't take all of it in like 2 days or something. But it's so impressive how well it works. It's like, I'll go take it out. The salt is gone, or appears to be gone, right?
Yeah.
And the outside is so much drier, and it is just weird. It's like when I put this on there, I put a lot of salt on it, and it is probably dispersed itself into the steak. And the water on the outside, the wetness in general that was there is basically gone.
Yeah.
And it's just weird.
Well, and I have heard that you should do that either well in advance or literally right before you put the steak on the thing, because if you put salt on and then let it sit for a little bit, it pulls the water out of the steak and never disperses back in.
Yeah.
And then your meat will seem drier.
Right.
So
Interesting.
osmosis is at play everywhere.
Wow.
And including roots. So if you don't have that transpiration force that's sort of pulling the water out, sometimes water will still move into the roots because of osmosis. And so if water is moving into the roots, but it's not evaporating water, you may get, oh, hang on, I lost my place right here. You may get a fun word that I had to look up, guttation, which is when the plant sort of will force water out of the leaves, even though no transpiration is happening. And that's the reason that water is often like on grass in the morning, is because if you watered the grass the night before or whatever, because of osmosis, it'll transport the water into the roots, and then it'll go up the plant. But then because there's no evaporation happening, it's like, hey, there's too much water here, there's too much pressure, and it'll just start
let it happen. Oh, wow.
And it'll sort of push it out.
Interesting.
So that is an additional force. And then there is likely some capillary action because, as we can talk about, even, you've seen that happen before. There was not mention of capillary action in this paper, but a lot of other resources I looked at did talk about capillary action being part of the forces that are putting water up through that xylem.
Yeah,
so
interesting.
I think that is definitely I don't know if it's, this is a common misconception, but I would think that there are situations where that certainly helps. So that is my takeaway from that.
Yeah.
So, but capillary action is definitely responsible for the water moving across paper. It's probably after the plant is no longer, opening its stomata, doing photosynthesis. That probably, like in cut flowers, maybe that could be happening, and how the food coloring moved up through the celery.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that is not something that can be ruled out based on all the papers I looked at. But there's so much more going on besides just capillary action that I got pretty excited, and it's so much chemistry.
Yeah, it really is. Gosh.
Cool.
That's crazy.
So you kind of already explained it back to me while we were chatting.
Yeah.
So I think that can be a good place for us to wrap it up.
Okay.
I was going to talk about capillary action at the end as a reward for you explaining it back to me, but you got me excited and I talked about it earlier on accident. I kind of went off script.
Oops. Sorry.
Oops. That's what happens when I have a script of like, these are the key points of this lesson, but he doesn't have that.
Yep.
This is a genuine learning process. So sometimes you got to flex.
Yeah. It's just like this collision of order and chaos,
But I did want to wrap it up with a category, order and chaos. That took me a second for my brain to process. I did want to wrap it up with a category of what is a plant that you've been excited about lately, or what is one of your favorite plants? Just a fun plant story.
Well, I did. Oh, wait. Yeah. Did you hear me talk about this earlier? Or was it just, because Barb hasn't come out yet.
About the
apple one?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I'll talk about that if it's okay with you.
Yeah.
Again.
I think that's a great one, actually. That makes me very happy.
Because I like plants. I don't plant them very often. I have, done that some, but I'm not a green thumb by any means. Most people around me are more into plants than I am. However, my son was eating an apple the other day, and he pulled out one of the seeds and just had done the earliest stage of germination, where it just has the little
white
root thing has come out, and he was like, "Oh, this is trying to grow." So I was like, "Okay, let's just put it in a cup." Like I got a little foam cup and put a little bit of dirt in it, and we put it in there, and we're like, "Let's just see what happens." And so I put it on the windowsill, and I would like sprinkle some water in there every couple of days, and then boom, sprouted up, kept on going. And so then I kept showing it to him every day and stuff, and he was just super excited about it. Just cool to make the discovery. For one, it's in my apple. Two, we planted it. It continued to go. We moved it to a bigger pot that actually would drain out better and stuff. And we're just kind of seeing what happens. Texas is not known for its apple trees, so the odds are against it a little bit. But it's just fun to have just seized that moment and just see what is going to happen.
Yeah.
And to also go into it knowing like, hey, so just out of an apple. So it's not like we went and got super excited, bought some apple seeds and got our hopes up too much. Just like, hey, this just happened to happen. Let's see what nature does.
Yeah.
So with a little bit of help, of course. So anyway, that's been pretty fun to watch.
That is fun.
Yeah. How about you?
Well, kind of seeing what happens. Did you hear me talk about our chaos approach?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So I'll say that a little bit about this, but basically we're renting a house right now and it's been a really fun experience. I've never rented a house. Like, I guess I rented a room or a house with a bunch of girls, but Mason and I have tried to like add landscape because our landlord's kind of like, whatever you think is fun, go for it. And so I'm trying to add native plants and all these things. So I'm very in tune with the like plants around. And I have this app where you can take pictures and figure out what plants they are. It's really fun. And so one thing I'm amazed by is how many little trees grow. And I guess it's because of squirrels.
Yeah.
But like in our little flower beds where I've planted all these seeds, it's like we have several oak trees that are trying to grow. And you're like, what? I didn't know that oak trees could just try to grow like that. One of them is in one of our big flower pots outside.
Yeah.
And I'm like, should we just grow this oak tree and see what happens? So that's kind of fun.
That's cool.
And then the other thing is, because we're renting, we're sort of starting to look for a house. We were like, okay, around this summer and fall is probably when we're aiming to move. So we don't know if we'll be there to reap the benefit of the garden. So we're like, we're not going to try to put too much work into it in case we have to move, get our heart broken, whatever.
Yeah.
And so we took the approach at the end of last season to just let as much stuff go to seed as possible. So like we let our basil flower and then put out seed and then die. And we just didn't interfere with it at all. And we did the same thing with a bunch of tomatoes. If it dropped its fruit, if they were like split or something, we're like, we'll see what happens. And and we've been like waiting, looking, seeing what's going to happen. And our very first tiny sprouts, I was like, oh, what is this? Is this like a sunflower seed? And I took a picture with my identification app and it was like, I was like, it looks kind of weird for a sunflower seed, which is why I took a picture. It's like, this is basil. And I was like, it worked. Something's growing. It worked. Like I was freaking out. So
that's awesome.
That's been kind of fun. And
Very
we
cool.
Also, in like our front garden bed, planted these things called inland sea oats. And we just picked up seeds like that had been dropped when we were on hikes, or our friends had some in their front yard. Our church had some out in the front of the church. And so every once in a while I would just grab some seeds and we planted those in our flower bed because they're native and they'll make it look really full, but they won't grow too tall and they'll be easy to maintain. And our very first sprouts of those are growing.
Nice.
It's just so exciting. I'm like, we're making this place closer to how it was originally.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. And we're not going to be here forever, but we're hopefully doing it in a way that's going to keep keep it up after we leave, like leave it better than we found it.
Yeah.
We've got bluebonnets that have bloomed and they're seeding. It's just so fun. And so I've really enjoyed seeing the wildflowers live their best life.
That's awesome. You'll have to send me the app to identify plants. That sounds cool.
Oh, yeah.
But specifically a kind of like plant I was looking at, I was like, that seems like it could be, for one, like, everyone wants to know like poison oak, poison ivy, that kind of stuff. But there's other random stuff where I'm just like, what even is this? And could it be something cool or should I just like pull it now?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
And
that seems like it'd be good to.
When they're babies, sometimes it can't quite get it.
Yeah.
So sometimes if I think it's on that line, I'll wait and I'll keep taking pictures, you know?
Yeah.
I did get a really cool tool called the Grandpa Weeder. Have you seen this? I don't often buy things that I've been influenced to buy. But we have stickers and they're very hard to pull because they have a tap root.
Right.
And this thing will go, it's really good in the spring. In the summer when the ground is hard, it's hard. But it like basically, it goes in with 3 prongs and then you have a lever that will push them together. And so you pull it back and it pulls out taproots. So it's so satisfying.
Nice. That sounds so nice.
So you can borrow ours anytime.
Yes, I'd love to. I remember when I would help my mom or my grandmother pull out weeds, they would teach me like wearing gloves with some of those like spikier kind of like stickers or other ones that have like things to try to prevent you from pulling them out.
Yeah.
And getting it all the way around it really good and then pulling up, and occasionally you would get one where like you got it the right way and it just comes out and it's got the whole thing is so satisfying.
Yeah.
But it wasn't every time. It was like every third one I'd like really get right thing.
Whenever you are pulling weeds though, just remember how much cool chemistry is happening in the leaves of it.
Yeah. Even though that's not the plant I want there, it was doing cool stuff.
It was. I mean, and listen, that's the thing with a lot of these. I'm like, I am mad that you are in my yard, but the ingenuity of like things like sticker plants, that it's like you really will cling to anything, and that's your seed, and you're spreading it everywhere is genius. I'm mad about it personally, but it's like a little bit of respect.
Yeah. Gotta respect it.
Life finds a way.
Gotta respect the game,
Yeah. Don't hate the player, hate the game.
Yeah. Well, this was a great topic. Thanks for teaching us.
Yeah, thanks, Letila, for getting my mind rolling.
Yes, for Letila asking and it being going in a different direction than expected, but being super cool.
Yeah.
So if you have a question, thought, idea, comment, follow up to any of this kind of stuff, we'd love to hear it. Please send that to us on our website at chemforyourlife.com. That's chem, F-O-R, yourlife.com to share your thoughts, ideas, questions with us. If you'd like to help us keep our show going and contribute to cover the cost of making it, you can do that by joining our super cool Chem community of patrons on patreon.com/chemforyourlife. And you can join at several different levels with several different perks, ways of us saying thank you for keeping the show going, for making it free for everybody else. You get an ad-free feed of the show and a bunch of other perks, bonus episodes that are exclusive to you, where you get a little more of an inside hangout look at Melissa and I. We share more about our lives in those. Those are super fun and just for y'all. And so you can support the show that way. But if you cannot do that, you can still help us by subscribing on your favorite podcast app, rating, writing a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, subscribing on YouTube, leaving a comment over there. And also, we don't say this very often, but you can also buy some Chemistry for Life merch like this right there on our website at chemforyourlife.com/store. We are going to be adding, as of the time that you're hearing this, it will be there, a very cool new Intermolecular Forces shirt that we've not been working on it for a while. We've just had it just in the bag for a while that we've been like, oh yeah, let's wait to use that. And now it's time. Partly
May the 4th be with you.
Exactly. Partly because of May the 4th be with you. It's a Star Wars esque design, which our previous Intermolecular Forces designs have been like that. This one's new, very cool. It's probably my favorite version we've done of it.
Mine too.
And I'm definitely going to get one myself. So check it out, chemforyourlife.com/store. Also supports the show, keeps it going, all that kind of stuff. And thank you for any of those things that you do or just continuing to listen and share. All helps the show. So thanks for doing those things.
Absolutely. This episode of Chemistry for Your Life was created by Melissa Collini and Jam Robinson. Jam Robinson is our producer, and really, I want to reiterate what Jam said is our episodes are not possible without our financial supporter on Patreon. So we want to shout each of you out by name, and thank you so much. So thank you to Julie S., Heather R., Autoclave, Chelsea M., Dorien V., and sorry, Dorien, I learned recently that I was pronouncing your name wrong, so I will always want to try to pronounce it correctly. Dorien V., Scott B., Jessie R., Ciara L., John T., Jeannette N., Cullyn R., Erica B., Elizabeth P., Sarah M., Rachel R., Letila, Katrina B., Suzanne P., Venus R., Lyn S., Jacob T., Brian K., Emerson W., Christina G., Timothy P., Stephen B., Chris and Claire S., Chelsea B., Abishai B., and Hunter R. It's incredible to me that this list has gotten so long and that there's so many people who are supporting us. It's really exciting.
Definitely. And if you'd like to learn more about today's chemistry lesson, you can check out the references for this episode in our show notes or in the description of the video on YouTube.
Yay chemistry!
Yay chemistry! Yay
and
plants!
Yay plants!